Hi, friends. Welcome to Digging Deep, a podcast brought to you by Motivo, where we unearth stories that bring us closer. I'm Rachel, joined by Dr. Carla, and together we are going to explore our shared experiences and what it means to be human.
We'll have conversations with clinicians, activists, and everyday heroes who share their wisdom. These discussions challenge our perspectives and ignite a spark for positive change. We'll explore love, loss, resilience, growth, and the power of human connection.
And we'll do so with humility, knowing that we are not the experts, but simply fellow explorers seeking to learn alongside you.
Digging Deep is more than a podcast. It's a community. Let's learn, grow, and support one another. So grab a cup of tea, find a cozy spot, and let's explore the heart of being human. Welcome to Digging Deep.
Hi.
Hey.
So good to see you. We were talking before the show. I feel like people can relate to this because whatever we use, StreamYard, has this feature that's like touch up your appearance like Zoom does, which I can't even go to like Google Meet or Microsoft Teams. I'm like, I don't want to look like I look.
Right. Who is this person? This is not how I look.
Yes. But on this one, we were just noticing it does your face, but it doesn't do your neck. And so I've opted to like not do it because my face looked 20 and my neck looked 80. And I was like, this is odd.
Right. And we wanted to look both the same. So either, both looks 80 or both looks 20, whichever. We're not saying either one is better or worse. We're just
That's
saying
exactly
we want
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would rather be 80 than 20. And that's not true. I don't want to be 80 yet. Like I'm ready to be the same age I am right now. But I feel like when I'm 80, I'm going to be super wise.
Yeah. And you're going to be like, what? Touch up my appearance? Why?
Yeah, I don't need it. I'm good. Yeah. This is me.
That's not me.
Yeah. I honestly do picture myself sometimes like, we just got back from Maine, you know this, at our company offsite. That is where I want to live someday. And I just want to stroll along the beach with like a shawl and like my dog's running. That's like my dream. That's what I want to do someday.
I love it. You know that Cammie keeps calling that your house, the Airbnb. She's telling everybody we went to Rachel's house. So, I mean, I feel like she's kind of like, saying that it's going to happen.
Yeah. I love that also we did that. We walked along the beach and my dogs were batshit crazy, jumping all over. So I have this envision of just, we're slowly walking together, looking at the birds together, me and my dog. And it's not going to be like that. It's going to be like Lucy
marking everything.
Lucy marking everything. Wrigley eating a seagull. Like it's not going to be as idyllic as maybe I think it is. But that's so funny about me. I love that. I love that she was there. She was with us at our company offsite. How beautiful.
She was with us. She loved meeting everybody. And I think like everybody is already ready to go back, which is understandable. It was amazing. It was such a great place.
It really was, wasn't it? I mean, that just piece of in-person human connection. I've been thinking about this lately. I'm curious what you think about this because I've been thinking about finding a local therapist here in Richmond. My therapist that I've had for a few years is in Atlanta. She keeps having kids and keeps going on maternity leave. So I'm like, I should find a therapist here. And I thought about it. I'm like, I think I want to go in person. Obviously our entire business is built around virtual supervision. And I think that for me, it's different with supervision therapy. And I don't mind telehealth at all, but I just am behind my computer screen so much. It's just nice to like get out of it for a second. What's your take on that?
I think it makes sense. I think it also like speaks to the fact that, therapists, like human being therapists are like always going to be in demand because the human connection that you get, even if it is behind a computer screen, like whichever one it is, you can actually create it online, but being in person, like actually sitting across from someone, it just has a different, experience. And some people love that every day, all day, and some people don't, and, still appreciate it, when it happens. So I like that idea. My therapist is still online, and it works because of schedule, but I think that I would love to see her in person.
What about as a clinician? Which one do you prefer more?
That's interesting. I actually I really do love them both. Like the good thing is that I've been able to see all of my clients in person at least once, most of the time. And I think that just having that helps. But I also think that there's something about, I don't know, just like the relationship that we're able to build, that it also just feels good, online too.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know that I have a preference. I really like them both.
Yeah, I think they both have positives, and
They do.
maybe some drawbacks as well. One of the things I noticed, this has nothing to do with our topic today, but one of the things I noticed when I transitioned to receiving therapy virtually was that I was able to better stay in my train of thought and like my like I don't even like my world of
Yeah.
like I wasn't as distracted by the
Mhm.
therapist's office, by their
Yeah.
tone inflections, or, maybe they look tired that day or something like that. Like I wasn't as like distracted by that. I was more able to kind of just like stay in my own space, which I thought was very interesting. I didn't anticipate that.
I think that is interesting. I think that there's also something to be said about like the comfort of home. If your home is comfortable, or like the space where you are, even like providing therapy, if it's comfortable, you are able to like be a little bit more vulnerable or a little bit more yourself,
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah. That
Well,
extends honestly to couples counseling as well, because I notice when Warren and I do couples counseling, we're usually sitting on the couch with our therapist on the screen.
yeah,
And it almost gives us this feeling of like we're in this together
yeah.
and he's like helping us through this, but like we're on the same team in like an interesting way,
Because you're the two that are in person together and
Right.
like connect.
Yes. There's a separation there. Yeah.
I really like that. I think that like there's something to, and we're going to talk a little bit about vulnerability today, but I think that there's something to being able to meet your needs, whatever that is, in order to be vulnerable. So I think for some people, based in their personality, being online helps to, helps them to kind of like dig deeper into who they are and to be a little bit more self-aware, because they're not having the distraction of things that are like, other people's stuff, like whatever's going on for them. And vice versa. I think that there are some people that are able to be more vulnerable when they are physically closer
Yeah.
to others.
That's really insightful. You're right. I think that's true. I think both are necessary.
Yeah. And we should do what, works for us.
Yes.
But I think, speaking of vulnerability, I think, this topic, the things that we use to numb, is something that actually came up organically as we were talking about vulnerability. And we were kind of like, we were discussing your night routine, but I think over the last couple of weeks, we've discussed like other things that, as we've talked about this topic, the things we use to numb that have come up for you. So we actually have had several really great conversations about this. So I kind of want, I'm going to give you the task of like summarizing those conversations, but, share why you thought this was a good conversation to have on the podcast.
Yeah, I think that piece too around it coming up organically, like what I like about doing this podcast with you is that I feel like all of our topics come up organically. It's not like we like meet together and we're like, let's map out the next 3 months of topics. It's like, I'm dealing with this right now and I'm talking to you about it like as my friend and coworker. And then we're like, wait, that would make a great Digging Deep. Like we should talk about that on Digging Deep. I wonder if other people are experiencing that.
I love that. Yes.
So you're right. It did come from that. I was sharing a little bit about just kind of some reflections I've been doing on my relationship with alcohol. My husband is in sobriety or in long-term recovery. He's been in recovery for 6 years now. I still drink on occasion, and I kind of go through these phases of not drinking at all, or having a glass of wine every night, and getting to the place where I get home and I've done my workout and I usually take a bath at night, and then needing it, feeling this urge to it, and then I'll go through this cycle of one glass is great for a while. And then all of a sudden I need 2 glasses to kind of get the same effect. And then maybe even, there's been a couple of times where it's been 3 glasses and I'm and it becomes a problem for me because I can't sleep at all if I have more than 2.5 glasses of wine, groggy the next, the physical side effects of it aren't good,
Right.
And so I always feel best when I'm really not drinking at all, or only drinking kind if I go out to dinner with a friend or something like that. The home drinking is what gets me in trouble because it's I just am kind of mindlessly continuing to do it. And I'm I don't like this. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel healthy, just from a health perspective. I gain weight if I'm doing that. I lose weight if I'm not doing that. Right. So I just feel it's not serving me in any way, except for that initial, I want to even say 15 to 20 minutes of the beginning of it where it calms my nerves.
Yep.
And I've been thinking about it a lot because it's not I'm using that drink to manage stress. This is after a 1-hour workout class where I've sweated and released out all of my energy from the day. It's after a warm bath that is super relaxing to me. It's usually after I've cooked dinner, and which I love doing. That's a big, so it's there's all these good things that I do, and then I tack on this to it, and it's not serving me at all. So that just led to a conversation between you and I around, is this kind of a numbing technique? And I actually have actually found through that conversation, identified other things that are even more of a numbing technique that I'd like to talk about today. But let me pause there and just see, how does that land with you in terms of just strictly the alcohol piece?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head when you said there's just this 15 minutes that you're almost in need of just it's almost like peace. It disguises itself as peace because it's you do the things, you check the boxes, you're working out, and that is the right thing for your body to combat the stress. That your body is at rest and decreasing the stress while you're in the bathtub. And then there's this 15 minutes that, like I said, disguises itself as peace that is actually numbing. It's and that's what we got to. It was there's this numbness that almost you need also because it's not work. It's your brain is off. You're not thinking about, oh goodness, now I'm not going to be able to sleep, or I'm going to have a bad day tomorrow, or whatever the case is. You're just your brain is completely off. And it's that numbness that I think that we need. And I mean, I do the same thing. I don't do it with, I think that I know the feeling of doing it with wine and beer, but there's also what I do with social media. There's kind of it's kind of like a running joke of moms at the end of the day, the one time you get to not have to work or do something for someone else or have a child touching you, you're I need to turn my brain off. I don't have to think about doctor's appointments. I don't have to think about tomorrow, are all the clothes clean? I'm just going to scroll and look at other people's lives for however long. And it ends up being, way too long.
I love what you said about the, wait, what was it again? The something piece.
Disguises itself as peace.
Disguises itself as peace. Yeah. That's it, isn't it? Because because that's what it feels like. It's and it seems also this very healthy thing to, it doesn't feel bad, it's not I'm I even told my doctor about it. Yeah, I think I told you this. Like a year ago, I would like told my doctor, I was like, I don't like it. I don't think it's good for me. And he was like, you're young, you're healthy, your numbers look great, you're fine. And I was like, am I though? Like, I'm telling you, I think that this is like not healthy. And I'm like asking for your medical opinion. Like, tell me a reason I shouldn't be doing this because it doesn't feel like I should be doing it.
Right.
Like, and I think that we are, there's certain numbing factors that are very socially accepted. And there are certain numbing factors that aren't, right?
Yeah.
And, alcohol is one of those ones that's just like what you do. I was remembering there's this like Stanford University a few years ago. I was reading that they came out with this policy on their campus of like any campus sponsored event had to have equally as attractive non-alcoholic options is what they called it. It's like, you can't just serve water and Coke. You need to serve some exciting, Topo Chico or flavored sparkling water or mocktail or something that, helps the person feel like you're in this with us. You're celebrating, you're enjoying whatever you're drinking as well, but you have an option to not just be the one drinking water.
Right. Yeah. It's such an interesting point about the fact that there are things that are socially acceptable. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but I think, what that just like brought to mind is like, some people do the same thing for that 15 minutes when it comes to like recreational drugs or, hard drugs. I mean, like that 15 minutes is something that people describe in different ways. And oftentimes it is self-medicating. And self-medicating is a form of numbing. So, it's just like there are certain things that your doctor's going to be like, this is a problem versus no, you're fine. You're okay to keep doing this thing that you're telling me is a problem.
You know what I love too that you said is that piece of for your social media scrolling, it's like not having to be responsible for anyone. And I think that is a good indicator of a numbing technique because if I don't really think of going to work out as not being responsible for anybody. I don't know why. Maybe because I have to drive there. I'm with other people. I'm working hard, like making it through the class, bath. I'm like, just doing the bath thing, right? Like, it's like, that's like, it's not the same thing, but and I definitely think that this was true for my husband and his addiction of like, it is a moment that I don't have to think about it. Like my thing would be pouring a glass of wine and watching Wheel of Fortune because to me, it's just like, channeling my future 80-year-old self, first of all, but also just like, I don't have to think about anything. It's like the same joy that I find in just total trash TV. Like, like what's that like real estate one in LA?
Oh,
Selling Sunset.
Yep. There it is.
Or the Byron Babes. Like I've been
Love is Blind. I'm also getting caught up on Love is Blind as well.
Oh, Love is Blind. Love is Blind. So good. The Byron Babes one is about Australia and it is awful. It is like awful, like so bad. Like, why am I watching this? But it's like, I don't take care of anything right now.
No responsibility.
That's the piece of it,
No responsibility. Like, you don't even have to think about anything. Like, we also talked about like that we love crime documentaries.
Yes.
And, we can talk, we have another episode, I think, about that too, because we need some help. But I think that like, even when it's crime documentaries, we have the responsibility of figuring out who did it. And like, judging their actions and like, oh, this is how I know that they did it. But when it's just like what we call trash TV, or when it's just something that is mindless, the whole purpose is that you're not actually having to think about what's next, what are the implications of this, who's harmed here. You don't have to like be a human being and like, have compassion for anybody. It is literally just you're watching. You might even be judging negatively a little bit other people's lives and get something out of that.
So I'm actually super excited to talk about like whether or not there are healthy forms of numbing and unhealthy forms of numbing. But before I do that, let me just share the other aha moment I had around numbing. I went on vacation the week before the offsite. went to
Mhm.
Mexico with some of my friends. It was very, very, very good. And I didn't work. I was very intentional about maybe, an email here or there, but hardly anything, really hardly anything. I almost forgot my laptop, which would have even been probably better, but I barely opened my laptop, if at all. And I noticed that a lot of feelings were coming up for me, like just painful feelings, like
Mhm.
stuff from my past
Mhm.
or, hard things I've been through. And what I realized was that probably the main thing I use to numb is work,
Yeah.
and I think when I've spoken about this in Mondays with Motivo, I get so many responses from therapists. I think it is a thing for therapists to be like, let me dive back into this form of like kind of tuning out by
Yeah.
like trying to be productive, at least for, you and I are both kind of like high achieving people. It's like, I think I find a lot of my self-worth in like producing something,
Sure.
getting something out there. And so when that's not that's not needed for a week of vacation, I just find myself being like alone with my thoughts and it's pretty uncomfortable.
It is. It is uncomfortable. And I think like with work and, and also being a therapist, you have the benefit of what you put into this, you get out of it. So if you're, a therapist that owns a practice, if you spend a whole bunch of time on building your practice, on marketing, on all of the, on the finances, on all of those things, you get that back out. You get, a successful practice.
Mhm.
With your clients, if you are dedicated to forgetting yourself as much as you possibly can and going headfirst into being there and showing up for your clients and having boundaries and like compartmentalizing what happened right before the session or whatever the case is, and you are there with your clients and you use the emotion that you have, whatever you have left, for them,
Yep.
you get the benefit. They get the benefit.
Yes.
So it's just like this, it is really a hard balance to say, like, this is actually what I'm using to numb. That needs like, so much self-awareness.
Yes, yes. Disguised as peace, I think, is part of it. And then I also think that it is, anything that I'm maybe using consciously or unconsciously to avoid painful, hard feelings, and I don't often know that. Like, it doesn't seem, you know, like the wrong thing, not even I want to say wrong or bad or anything like that, but it
Mhm.
doesn't feel like I'm
Harmful.
doing something unhealthy when I'm doing it. I
Yeah.
just notice that, and this is honestly one of like the main reasons I go to therapy is because I don't notice this stuff oftentimes.
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
just going, and there's so many times that I go to therapy and I'm like, I'm doing really good. And he's like, wait a minute. Let's just talk. Let's dig in there a little bit. And then 2 minutes later, I'm like sobbing,
I
you
know.
know?
I know. This is part of the pattern. This is kind of like what we do and what we learn to do.
Do you experience that as well? Do you go into it thinking, like, I don't know if that's just like a me personality thing. Do you go into therapy? Do your clients go into therapy thinking they're doing great and then you help them get a little deeper?
Sometimes I'm like, to my therapist, I'm like, I'm pretty sure I've graduated from every 2 weeks. Like, I sent you that meme on Instagram. Like, I am pretty sure I beat therapy. Like, I
Beat
won,
therapy.
and we can go to maintenance. And she's like, okay, hold on, because let me just remind you of the last time you said this. Like, all of this stuff was burning in your life. And I'm like, okay, try me. And then 2 minutes later,
Here
they're
it
like,
comes.
okay,
Yeah.
actually, I might need to come weekly.
Yeah. I'm like turning it around and being like, so what's going on for you,
Right.
Eric? Well, how's your marriage?
That's true.
He's like,
That's
nope,
true.
nope, nope.
I know. We're so good at that. We're such bad clients. Okay, we'll talk about that another day.
Yeah.
Okay, so you asked me about healthy ways, right?
Yes.
To kind of, whether it be not numb, but like to actually get to a sense of peace and to kind of like decompress. And I mean, there are plenty of healthy ways. I think that like scrolling, Instagram can it doesn't have to be unhealthy, you know, like I think having a glass of wine or two at night doesn't have to be unhealthy. I think it shifts to harmful when we're talking about an impact on our lives, right? So, you know, if you're unable to sleep, and we know that sleep and like good sleep hygiene helps our overall mental and physical health, but yet we're not sleeping because we're having too much wine, then that's where the problem is. Or if we wake up in the morning and we, you know, feel groggy, or, you know, we're in a bad mood and we know that we have a 9:30, you know, meeting, that then kind of moves into harmful. But I do think that there are, like, you know, ways for us to numb or to kind of like turn our brains off that are, you know, just kind of universally, you know, healthy. And one of those that I use is mindfulness and yoga. I think both of those, and I do specifically yin yoga and restorative yoga. And both of those, especially the person that I use on YouTube, it's Cassandra, Yoga with Cassandra. She does like affirmations as well while she's doing yin yoga. So it's almost like you are training your brain to think about something, because your brain may be racing. And so it's kind of like, you know, funneling it into something, funneling that energy into something, and like training it to just focus on that one thing over the course of a meditation, over the course of, you know, that yoga class. And I think meditation can be hard, especially at the end of a day for, you know, for me, especially because I'm thinking about, you know, I'm kind of like reviewing, you know, what was I like as a mom? What was I like, you know, at work? Did I do all the things that I was supposed to do? No. Okay. I need to put those on tomorrow, or I need to be better when, you know, my 4-year-old has temper tantrums every 3 minutes, literally. Like, you know, I kind of like get in when I do meditation at the end of the day. I'm like, it's like, you know, an open field to be able to think about those things. So I use meditation that actually has a guided, you know, like imagery, or like, you know, some sort of affirmations along with it. And, you know, I think that usually helps as well. I think that vacation is also something that I've learned helps as well to like really allow us the opportunity and the space to turn off. And we have to train ourselves to do that, right? Like, you know, they could be that we take a few days off from work, and we have to take the apps off of our phone, the work apps off of our phone. And I think that is like escaping, you know, what your everyday life is, and creating something different, and constantly reminding yourself to just not think about it. No, it's okay that you didn't bring your laptop, or that, you know, you didn't open it today. It's okay to read a book instead of, you know, go online. It's okay to not. My other thing is retail therapy. And I mean, it's to the point where, Rachel, when I tell you that I've purchased something, you're like, what's wrong? Like, what's going on?
Yes. And also, don't you already have that? You need another Lucky sweater? Okay.
Color, duh. But I think that like when I'm able to take vacation from work, I'm also able to say, during this week, I'm not going to do the things that I normally do, but now I have the time. I don't have to just like wait for 15 minutes. I have the time to, you know, just lay and do nothing.
Yes.
That's okay. You have to just constantly remind yourself of that.
I have a question about this, especially the meditation piece of it, because I have done yin and restorative before. I find it to be excruciating. Like yes. And I've heard yoga teachers say that Shavasana, the ending, you know, corpse pose, is the hardest pose for some people. And I'm one of those people. I'm like, did my workout, I'm done, heading home, going to the grocery store. I got this to do. You know. And it's not even like I'm stressed and I have all this stuff. It's that I don't feel good when I'm sitting still. And I've tried many times to like meditate, and I find it to be excruciating is like the only word I can think of. So here's what I want to know. Like, because when I've done work on this kind of stuff in therapy before, what I've learned is that creating space for the pain or the hard thing is really hard in the moment, but it provides like ultimate benefit later on in terms of my ability to, take like a hard thing with Warren, and I feel the pain associated with that hard thing. And then I feel closer to him later because I have processed that hard thing, and taken time to do it, So can you tell me, how do you see the benefits of meditation later on?
Yeah. So you mean, okay, after the fact.
In the days that follow, how did you, is it only that relaxing moment then, or do you see evidence of it later?
I do see evidence of it later. It slows my brain down. It is this constant state of restfulness. So there's also a different type of yoga. I want to make sure that I say it correctly, but I might not. Yoga nidra, which is kind of like the art and the practice of rest. And so it's like teaching your body, your mind, all of your senses to be in this constant state of rest, but you're not sleeping. And so, very similar to Shavasana, but it is just this practice of slowing down. And so what meditation does for me and what Yin does for me is it teaches me what it feels like and the benefits of slowing down. And there's almost these practices that I use to slow down. So the affirmations sometimes trigger that slowdown. But there's also this, there was this meditation that went along with a guided imagery where you kind of go to this place that is very restful for you. For me, it's the beach, and you bring your all of your senses there. And so you can do that at any moment. You can do that during a meeting. You can do that, during a stressful event. And that the meditation is the practice of being able to bring yourself back to that state.
Yep.
So I do think that it definitely helps. And it still helps you numb, because if you don't want to think about something that's painful, for another meditation that I use, you put it onto a cloud and you let the cloud just roll away. You acknowledge that it's there and you put it on the cloud, you let it roll away. And you can still numb from that, or
that. Can you send me that one? The cloud rolling away one. I like that one.
Yeah. It's such a it's a practice, and that's what meditation is. You can't just do it and then just be okay, it works. It's the same thing with Yin as well. I do think so. Even though I know that numbing is sometimes something that we have to do, you've mentioned a few times in this conversation as well about the fact that there's pain there. And so pain is just a form of vulnerability. So I would like to know, about this avoiding vulnerability. Tell me more about just kind of the practice. That's also a practice too, of avoiding vulnerability, and why you would need that at the end of a long day.
I think it's a really great point. And I think that is, that is probably a big piece of what it stems to. And I think for me, it has less to do with being vulnerable with another person and more being vulnerable kind of with myself, of just acknowledging hard things in my life, or, the painful things. I find it just to be easier to be productive through them than I do to sit with the pain and let it be with me, I think the versions of myself that I'm often envisioning. And I think the reason that I can go to a hot yoga class and feel productive from it is because I see the direct result of it really quickly, lengthened hamstrings, greater flexibility, sweating and just feeling the endorphin release of that. That's the piece that I actually can't go to yoga if it's not hot, because I need the sweating to feel like I've accomplished something. So it's the other piece is what I have a hard time with, the slowing down, the stopping. And I think I don't know. Maybe it's just that I'm like scared of what comes up in those moments, those moments of like quiet with myself, or maybe even quiet with other people. Because I think about like, if you ask me like what would I love to do in the evening time in order to rest and recharge, it's not going to dinner with a friend. Like, I'm like, that sounds way too much. And, maybe that is that vulnerability piece of getting out there and having social connection and, leaving the house. It
Yeah.
usually looks like laying on the couch, resting, relaxing, eating a favorite meal, watching trash TV. Like, that's what it looks like for me to feel.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's any piece of vulnerability in that.
Okay, so I have a question. You can tell me to mind my business because it's kind of like a therapy question. So you were saying that, you need to feel productive.
Yes.
So where's the vulnerability in feeling unproductive? Like if you actually are imagining that yoga where you're not sweating is actually you being unproductive, why is that vulnerable for you?
Ooh, great
Sorry.
question. No, I love it. I love it. Let's go there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's because my feelings of self-worth, are in direct correlation to output of something, and laying, on my back in Shavasana feels like no output, and I've heard that, if people listening like know much about the Enneagram, I know some about it, not a whole lot, but I know I'm a 3, which is the achiever. And I know that there's like other things that you can be like a different number in periods of like hardship. And I know that 3s go to like a more lazy 9, which is like the 9 is like, maybe what they would do to deal with hard things is to kind of like cut off and just like be alone for a bit and like don't do anything and kind of numb that way. And that's kind of like where I go to. So I think it's kind of some extremes of like major productivity and go, go, go. And my worth is wrapped in to going, producing, doing,
Sure.
and then the nothingness, the quiet and the calm, like even my words calling that nothingness. Some people probably would call that vacation, a beautiful, relaxing moment. And for me, it's like, what came out, like, I can't stand going to dinner with a friend or having conversations with friends where they never ask me about Motivo. Because like for me, it is like so wrapped into my purpose in the world in a very unhealthy way, right? Like I can see the problem there of like, okay, and my therapist has told me before, I'm worried about what would happen if Motivo is a massive failure, which it could be. Startups are all the time, like what that would do to your like sense of self-worth. And I'm like, I'm worried about that too. What are we going to do?
Together. That's why I'm here. I think that makes so much sense. And again, you get the benefit, right? If you are saying that productivity is what you have to give and you give it nonstop to Motivo, then and Motivo is successful, then why would you change anything?
Right. Yes. That's exactly it. When people suggest meditation to me, in my head, I'm thinking, what's the point? Like one of our coworkers, Yen, just suggested like, hey, let's do a group meditation thing and I'm like, I wanted to do that because I'm like, I love this team. I'd love to be with this team. Not because I want to do fucking meditation. I don't,
Sure. Yeah. And I think that's like, it's so hard because it is training your brain to not think about things, to not worry about, the one thing you can do today to ensure Motivo's success. Yes. It's a stoppage. It's a stoppage of productivity. That's essentially what it is. And your face is like, that's why I don't do it.
It is like, it's interesting because one of the things I think we were going to talk about is like what that's like as like a startup founder as well. And
Yeah.
that is the antithesis of being a startup founder. Like in all of the books, radios, like
Right.
nobody's talking about like how good it is for you to rest, like how that's better for the business, how being less productive might help the company, and so like there's like this part of my brain that's like, I know that to be true. Like I know that if I practiced meditation, it would be good for motivo in lots of ways, like it would maybe help me be more clear-headed, less like, reactionary in my conversations, like, just kind of more relaxed, slowing things down, as you mentioned earlier, like just like slows things down for you in a good and helpful way, make less mistakes, like all of those things. I can see how it would be a benefit. And at the same time, I just feel hardwired a little bit towards the other,
And it feels vulnerable. Like slowing down does feel
Mhm.
vulnerable.
It sure
And
does.
I think in startup culture, something that I'm noticing is that if you slow down, even if you take a week off, you
Mhm.
think about at some point the founder that isn't slowing down,
Mhm.
or the teammate that isn't slowing down. And so how much will that difference make, in the end?
Yes. There's a lot of pressure in that because it's like as a founder, and I'm sure, like, I think that there's a lot of overlap, honestly, between what it's like to be a founder and what it's like to be a clinician, and I think that there's like a sense of responsibility. I mean, I feel responsible for, our employees, our customers, our supervisors, all of those things, to like do a good job for them and not be like this epic failure, and obviously I know that that's some about me and then it's some about other people, so like there's just this other piece of pressure that makes me feel like working really hard is like the right thing to do, and I think that's where I kind of get tripped up sometimes.
Mm. That's so hard. It's such a hard balance, because vulnerability is good. Knowledge of self and where the pain is, where the struggle is,
Mhm.
where your soft needs are, where your needs are, where your softness is. I put those together. It is very important for us to know, for self-awareness, and also for long-term success and growth.
Mhm.
And there's also a very clear, you know, like opposite view of being a go-getter.
Yeah.
And there is never any conversation of being a go-getter that says for you to rest. It
Mhm.
says, make sure that you work out, make sure have some self-care and take a bath, and a glass of wine or two at the end of the night is fine.
Yep. That's right. Yes. And I think that's where I get to in my head because, I think too, the piece of like, you know, your job, even if you're a high performing person and you work for this big company and you like what you do and you're contributing to the success of the company, if the company fails, you're probably not going to blame yourself, you know? And in my world, it's like, I feel like there is a really direct correlation between the company doing well. And like, if the company were to fail, I feel like I would say in my head, I wonder if it would have failed if I worked just a little bit harder, like
Yeah.
just 10 hours more a week, And I think that's a pressure that I feel that makes me want to just like keep going.
I
Yeah.
think therapists
Yeah. Go ahead.
at every stage, and clinical supervisors of their supervisees, feel that, very real feeling
Yes.
that the success of the person I'm serving and providing these services to, the success or failure is deeply intertwined with my level or our level of, success as a provider.
Yes.
If I were good at this, then they wouldn't be struggling so much.
That's right.
If I were good at this, then people wouldn't harm themselves. If I could just be the one to figure out what's going to happen next, then I could stop the struggle.
Do you think that that also, I just had this thought, correlates with what it's like to be a mom?
Oh,
Where there's
100.
like, because the things I wrote down of like the overlap between a founder and a therapist is
Yep.
feeling responsible for other people, pressure to get it right.
Yep.
Like, I'm like, that
Mhm.
sounds a lot like being a mom too, or a parent, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, all of the like conscious parenting, like, writing is essentially that the parent is responsible for almost like everything. Like, you
Mhm.
can't actually blame your child for struggling with emotions. In fact, they're learning about how to manage emotions, how to like have self-compassion, all of those things from you. So even without, a very clear like output, like I don't necessarily have an idea of like that I want Cameron to be X, Y, and Z, except that I want her to be happy and I want her to be a good human. And that's directly related. The research says this, people who do and don't know what they're talking about say this, that it is directly related to me. That's so much pressure.
It's so much pressure, isn't
Thank
it?
you for reminding me of that. I
Yeah, you're
forgot.
welcome. I mean, I'm here for it. Like, let's talk about every hard thing involved in life.
I had numbed myself from that and only focused on my job. Okay, well, great. Here
There
we are.
was one time that my sister and I went to, she's a mom of 3, and she has another friend who's a mom, and they invited me to go to this like comedian. It was like a comedian, it's like a Southern woman who like mostly has jokes about being a mom and just like how hard it is. But it was like kind of this like subculture of like, and you've probably seen it on social media where it's like vodka in the sippy cup for you, or like, like wine in your coffee cup kind of thing. And
Right.
like as I look around the room, there were just all these moms getting like literally like stumbling drunk. And I'm like, this doesn't
Yep.
feel healthy. And it feels like it's like this indicator of like, I have no space for my own, like, even the things that I'm talking about with like being a founder, being a therapist, I
Yep.
feel like they don't even scratch the surface of what it's like to be a mom and to have the constant, like, I've heard people call it like a ticker of like what else your child needs every single day. So like
Absolutely.
scrolling on social media, it just seems like like you're just getting it through, right?
I need it. And I think that there's also like there's a culture, there's a community of primary parents. That's essentially what you're describing, is like the primary parent, the person who has to consistently, make the doctor's appointments, think about the next thing. Cameron was supposed to bring like 4 things to school today. And I was like, seriously, why 4 things? And you only gave me 2 days. But anyway, I'll complain about that later. And just the person who has to do this. There's a community of primary parents on social media. So while you're scrolling for, to have that numbness, you're also scrolling for like connection of experience.
Mhm.
And you're like, this whole entire day, I didn't necessarily have anyone who like, spoke to that part of me that is just simply exhausted. My brain is simply exhausted. And there are people who have created a community with the sole purpose of speaking to the people who need that 15 minutes or that moment, whatever that meme or that reel is, to say, I'm going to speak directly to you. And there's like, hundreds of thousands of people that need to see this.
Yes, yes. I have a question about that. I feel like we have barely looked at our agenda.
We,
Like,
we have, and, we are.
but
We have
I
9
have a
minutes.
question about it because I'm impressed by you in the sense that like anytime I'm not working is 100% my own time. I can do whatever I want, right? How
Yeah.
do you're very high performing in your job. You care a lot about what you do. You're very good at it. You invest a lot of your time and energy into it.
Yeah.
and you're one of the best moms I've ever seen, you know, in terms of like your love and care for Cammie. Like, how do you care for yourself?
I don't.
But no, you do, because you're like, you do.
Okay, so the topic of my therapy appointments. Okay, so let's say therapy. That's number one. The topic of my therapy appointments is mainly my therapist saying, what did you do for yourself these last 2 weeks?
Wow.
And I say nothing. But in order for me to stop saying nothing, which is performance-based, but I don't care, is that I do walk now. I do stuff now. So I walk every day now by myself. I make sure that if I'm going to have a walk with Cameron, that's my second walk of the day. So I do have a walk by myself every day. Or, you know, sometimes it's like a couple walk. And that I think also is something that is for me too. But time by myself. And most days that's the only thing. But I like protect it. Like that's literally the only thing. If that's literally the only thing I can do for myself, then that's great. Or I buy myself something.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen that. I've witnessed it.
Yeah, you've witnessed it firsthand. So, I mean, I think that is probably the growth edge of, you know, people who are working parents. I think working moms, working primary parents have a very like specific need. And that's kind of the constant, you know, need for growth. That's a space for growth of like first feeling, you know, seeing the compassion, you know, like having self-compassion to say like, no, you actually need this. The guilt and the shame that comes up when you do it, that is what you work on. You don't actually just, you know, ignore that you need this time. You know, like you and I have talked about like my philosophy with vacation was always that I would work on vacation. And like, you know, you have really helped and challenged me there of like, no, you need to take this time off so that you're better, you know, when you come back and spend the time, you know, with Cameron and all of those things. So I definitely think talking about it has also helped too, because there's this constant, like, if I talk about a need to be by myself or a need to take care of myself, there's just like this little guilty part of me that's like, you're complaining. Look at all of the wonderful things that you have. You have an amazing job. So why would you complain and say that you need time off? You know what I mean? So, you know, I also work on those thoughts and feelings in therapy. So therapy, walking, I also do a massage once a month. I just remembered that. I just started this month.
Yes. Yeah. I love all of those things too. I mean, I feel like that the theme of today is basically like, this is a problem. We're not good at it.
We still have it. Yep.
Yes. You should. We're not going to do it, but you should.
Right. Exactly. Here are some ideas, but from beginning to end, we still struggle with it.
And we do still struggle with it. And I would say that probably, and one of the things that I love most about having these conversations with you is that I feel like that it's less about solving it maybe and more about like acknowledging that it exists, which I think is like a really big part of, you know, solving it. I'm wondering, what do you think our therapist would tell us? I have something I think my therapist would tell me about this. Like, what do you think our therapist would tell you? Want me to go first since I have one already?
Yes, please.
Okay. I think my therapist would tell me like, just start to like raise awareness of like when how you're feeling when you are numbing yourself, like what, you know, just asking yourself a few questions about what might I be trying to avoid right now that I could put on a cloud and like let sail away for a few minutes, you know?
That's a good one. That's such a good one. And I think that there are times that, you know, my therapist would be gentle in that way. She also, you know, would challenge me and say that it's a trauma response. And like, you know, I need to, that the self-awareness does at some point need to circle back to where the trauma is. Like, where did this trauma this meaning making come from, where I am constantly having to do and be, and this feeling of not enough, like that it is not enough, and the worthiness of a break and rest, like that is a trauma response.
Mhm.
And so I'm here, she'll say, I'm here to talk about the trauma and stop rolling your eyes at me.
I love her. Oh my gosh. I love that you said trauma response too, because we didn't even really hit on that. And I feel like it's like, yeah, that's probably it. You know, like, I mean, I sent you this meme. We have a relationship at work, a relationship on Marco Polo, and a relationship on Instagram memes that we're sending back and forth. But that one that it was like, you know, doing teletherapy from your childhood home is like reporting live from the scene of the accident. And I mean, if I can think back to like just even for a few minutes of reflecting on where did my desire to perform come from, you know, and I can remember childhood tendencies of wanting to be the best, wanting to be ready for school before anybody else was, so I could get the praise of my parents of what a good girl I am to be ready for school while my sister's trying to find her shoes and my brother still hasn't gotten out of bed, you know, all of those things. There's a lot there, you know.
There's so much there. Yep. And my therapist would say, we're at the top of the hill. You can lay down if you want, but just know that there's stuff on the other end, on the other side that we have to.
I love this woman.
She's amazing. She is amazing.
Those are some really good, like, ways to say it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. She has to be kind of like, you know, really smart about it, because like I wouldn't even let her say trauma for like 3 years.
Yeah. You'll outthink her.
And I'm a therapist.
Yes. Yeah. I don't let my therapist say Jesus. I'm not ready. We've talked about this before. I'm not ready to talk about my religious trauma. Don't say it. He who must not be named.
Oh my gosh, that made me laugh. Okay, we're gonna queue up next week, right?
Yes. Tell me what we're gonna be talking about.
The one thing from our agenda that we'll do. So next week we are going to talk about meaningful and successful interracial friendships. This is also something that came up on Marco Polo. And, you know, we'll kind of talk about it next week, but, you know, I think that there's a lot of space for us to talk about what's meaningful about our relationship. And I think one of them, from my perspective, is just being able to be seen as like, you know, a whole person. You know, as a Black woman, I enter into our friendship, and, you know, I enter into our friendship with a white woman. And it's a meaningful relationship. And we talk about race, we talk about gender, we talk about it all. And there is no discomfort. And I feel like that has been the case, you know, for a very long time. And I don't know that we get to talk about, you know, this topic enough. And I think that it's one that a lot of people would really love to dig into or hear.
I think so too, because I actually wouldn't say that it's always been what it is today. For you and I think that there's some mistakes I made early on that I want to talk about next week that I probably have never even shared with you, but just like some learnings along the way of like, you know, that I could have done that differently, you know, like, and I think it just would be helpful to, I think a lot of people get this wrong, to be honest with you. A lot of people get this wrong, but have the desire for, you know, a diverse friend group because of what that brings to your life. You know, I think it's a more enriching. I remember the church that we went to when we were in LA was multi-generational, multiracial, you know, like I learned so much from being together every single week with people who were much older than me and people who were much younger than me, people who had like lots of different it was like a little bit less volatile political climate back in that day. But it brought a lot to my life, as does my friendship with you. So I to talk about it.
I can't wait to talk about it. I think even in a volatile political climate, it's hard too. It's hard to, you know, be able to say, you know, yeah, we have a friendship where we talk about that. I mean, we align on so much too. So I think that also makes it easier. But yeah, I can't wait to.
If we didn't align, we probably couldn't be friends.
I know, yeah. There's some things that just wouldn't work.
Yes, some non-negotiables there. All right. Well, thanks to everybody who watches this episode. We love doing these. And, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, if you want to watch the video. And we're on LinkedIn Live as well. So I always love this with you.
Me too.
What a great way. We're going to start doing the live recording on Friday.
Yes. Yeah. It's such a great way to start the weekend.
It really is, isn't it?
I really love it. I love these conversations, and it really helps to just kind of like deepen our friendship too. And I noticed that. So I appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay. Chat soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye.